Hello everyone and welcome to this video about earning your competition license with the Sports Car Club of America. This is a guide to help you get started and get you on the path to earning a full competition license. In this video I'd like to cover the organization of the Sports Car Club of America, finding your region, different types of licensing schools, information about SCCA licensing, what you need to do before you go to an SCCA school, what you can expect while you're at an SCCA school, and what to expect after an SCCA school. I'll also cover estimated costs at the end of the video. Talk about how the Sports Car Club of America is organized. The map in front of you shows the different divisions that make up the SCCA. Within each division are regions, and those regions work together to put on driver schools throughout the year. What's important about this to know is that different regions across the country may sponsor different types of programs. For example, a region may be very strong in autocross and not as strong in road racing. So their focus may be more on autocross than road racing, which means if you live near one of those regions, you may have to travel a little further to find an SCCA competition licensing school. Also, different regions put on different types of SCCA competition schools. They may have their school mixed with a racing weekend, or they may have their school included in a weekend where there's a lot of time trials or high performance driving experiences or a number of other options as the members of those regions decide what type of events they want to run. And so it's important to look at what regions are near you and what do they host and what can you get involved in. Now, for example, I'm in the Central Division and I'm in the Blackhawk Valley region. And the Blackhawk Valley region, the Land O'Lakes region, and the Milwaukee region, they typically work together to put on a driver school in about April every year. And so it's easy for me, I live about 30 minutes north of Blackhawk Farms, it's easy for me to attend an SCCA competition licensing school. Whereas if you live in Indiana, for example, you would have to probably travel to Blackhawk Farms to go to the SCCA licensing school, the competition school. And so it's important for you to look at what division you're in and then find the regions nearest to you. And I'll talk about that in just one moment. Here I'm showing you a screenshot of the region finding site on the SCCA webpage. If you go to scca.com/regions, you can use this tool to find the region closest to you. You do not have to be a member of SCCA to use this tool. Here you see you can simply put in your zip code, search by zip code, and you'll find the region closest to you and other nearby regions. Now I'm in the Blackhawk Valley region, so that's my area region there, and it shows other regions such as the Milwaukee region, the Southern Illinois region, the Chicago region, Iowa region, and whatnot, being around my area. I mention this because you do not have to join a region that is physically closest to you. You can join any region in the United States if you'd like. And in fact, you can join more than one region. However, I do recommend to, especially for people just starting out, it is to your benefit to join a region close to you and go to their meetings. If they have region meetings or they have social events off season, or even go to other events such as autocross events or road race events, go to these events to meet people in your region, to get to know people so that they know you. Tell them what your goal is and what you want to do. Let them know you're interested in obtaining a racing license, a competition license. They can help you find the resources and talk to the right people to make sure you achieve your goal. So use this tool if you're new to SCCA and you're not sure where your region is, to find your region and then click on it. And you can even click on the divisions as well, and you will be taken to that division's website. And there'll be more contact information for specific people that you can contact and let them know that you want to get involved in SCCA and that you're interested in obtaining a road racing competition license. There are a number of ways of earning your SCCA competition license. One of the first ways is to go to a private racing school such as Skip Barber or Lucas Oil Racing Schools and go through one of their programs to meet the credentials of earning a license. These tend to be more expensive, although not always, but they also have opportunities for you to complete all the requirements and obtain a full competition license by the end of the school. A lot of people think that you need to go to these types of schools, and the cost barrier to these schools being thousands of dollars tends to make it more difficult for people to obtain an SCCA license. That is not the case, however. You can go to an SCCA driver's school, which is a school to earn your license put on by the club. It generally has a lower price point and allows people to obtain a road racing license. And so I've just clicked that link and I've showed you this is the driver's schools listed on the SCCA webpage. And that URL is scca.com/schools. And here you see SCCA regional driver's schools all listed right here. And for example, again, I said earlier, I'm in the Central Division. Here is our driver school at Blackhawk Farms. It's going to happen April 8th through April 10th this year. And so you could find any one of these driver schools. You could go out to the school at La Junta Raceway if you wanted to and earn your racing license there. You do not have to do it. I do not have to go to Blackhawk Farms, but it's convenient. One of your higher expenses in racing is going to be towing and getting to and from the track. And since I live 30 minutes away from Blackhawk, it's just easier for me. So here are all the racing schools, the licensing schools that you can go to throughout the year. And we have them listed all the way into August. There are also professional schools here that give you the credentials to obtain a full competition license and then to meet the novice permit and other things I'll show you in a second. But here you see the Allenberg Motorsport, right? That's one. BIR Performance Driving School up in Minnesota, that's another. They're all listed here, and you'll have to go to their website and read their information. Now, one thing I want to point out, for example, MSR Houston says 3-day competition driving school. That means if you go through their 3-day course, you will then be eligible to receive a full competition license in SCCA. Here, Fast Lane Racing School, that is a 4-day course, so you must go through all 4 days of that course. Now, if we scroll down, you'll see that there's other schools that get you your novice permit, plus the driver school credit, and 2 event weekends. So that means that you'll be able to go to that Skip Barber school, for example. It's a 3-day course, and you'll get the credit for having your novice permit, going to a driver school, and having 2 event weekends under your belt. The basic requirement in SCCA is obtain a novice permit, go to driver school, and then have 3 race weekends under observation on your permit, and then you can apply for a full competition license. So these schools get you close. You're 1 event short. These schools listed here, and again, you see the Allenberg School listed again. Now, this means this is their 3-day school. If you do only a portion of this school, then you can get a novice permit plus your driver's school credit plus one event credit. Right, and then down here, driver's school only. So these are accredited schools that you can go to. They tend to cost more money, be more expensive, but the goal is that you get a lot of track time and you get more personalized coaching. If those tend to be a little bit expensive for you, then you are welcome to look at, and we will look at in this video, the SCCA licensing schools that SCCA puts on. I do want to show real quickly, for example, MSR Houston, what their school looks like, because is actually a great value. Go to competition driving. And so with this school, if you came with your own car, $1,750 if you brought your own car. That's a really great price point if you have the ability to travel to Texas in any one of these days. Now, if you look, these days are, for example, they're Monday through Wednesday. So it's their off the weekend days, which can make it more difficult because that means you have to take more time off of work. Plus, you have to travel there. If you live close, that's not a problem. But even in a Spec Miata or a Gen 2 Spec Racer Ford rental, $3,850. That's still a great price, as this school will get you to your full competition license. And at the end of the video, I'll talk about how much the cost was for me to earn my full competition license, and you can compare it against this cost. So we've looked at private schools and SCCA driver schools. We also have another opportunity within SCCA, and that is what we call Club Racing Experience. This is a lower stakes experience than a school, but it is designed to get you the on-track observation experience that you need to be signed off for an SCCA competition license. In SCCA racing, you need a minimum of 3 hours to obtain your competition license. The Club Racing Experience is designed to get you the time you need and the ground school experience you need to be signed off to obtain your racing credentials. Again, as I said before, this is a lower stakes opportunity. So if this is something that interests you, you can come on over to scca.com/pages/cub-race-experience. That's club-race-experience. And learn more about the Club Racing Experience as an avenue to earning your club racing license. Upcoming experiences are listed here, and you can choose any one of these experiences. If you're on the East Coast, there's a couple in New England, and if you're in the Midwest, we have some at Gingerman Raceway here. You can use these to obtain your racing license to go racing in the Sports Car Club of America. Lastly, I'll talk about other organizations. There may be other sanctioning bodies in your area that provide driver's school opportunities. For example, in the Midwest, we have the Midwestern Council of Sports Car Clubs, and twice a year they hold a driver's school that you could attend and then use to obtain your SCCA license to go road racing. You'll need to go into the SCCA GCR, which is the General Competition Rules book. And in that book, under the licensing section, they list something like 25 to 30 organizations that they accept licensing credentials from. So if you have been involved in other organizations, you may want to look at that and see if your experience or your credentials that you currently have can count for an SCCA license. You may not have to go to a driver's school, or they may ask you to go to the driver's school for a half a day or something, or they may ask you to be under observation for one weekend. You know, it all depends on what they decide when you talk to them, and I'll talk about who to talk to in just a moment. The information for SCCA licensing is in the GCR, and you can find that on the website under the download section. It's in Appendix C of the GCR. Now, don't get overwhelmed when you open that document. It's a large document. There's lots of sections. Just take it section by section. I'll give some recommendations later on in this video about what you should read. First thing I want to talk about, or I want to show you, is the novice permit application. You'll need to fill out this application. You'll need to fill out a medical form and then send both of those in along with your payment of $135. And then you will receive the novice permit. So let's go through these first. So here is the novice permit application. If you're interested in going to a driver's school, you need to file for a novice permit. This is the application that you will fill out. You see here again, the novice permit cost is $135. Fill out your information. You do not have to pay an additional $140 for special handling unless there's a reason to. You need to get it quickly, or you forgot to turn this in, or something of that nature. Put in the information. Here it does list, we'll give you an opportunity to list previous related experience. So you can write that down here. Maybe you've done Champ Car races. Maybe you've done Lemons races in the past. So you've raced with an enduro organization. Write that down. Let them know what your experience is. Fill this sheet out. And again, here it talks about everything you need to submit to obtain your novice permit. And that's basically the application and the physical examination requirements. And we'll talk about those in just a moment. So now let's talk about the medical form, and let's look that over. So here's the medical form. It gives detailed information of what you need to do to complete this step. And it explains about renewals or first-time submissions. So read this over carefully. And SCCA does accept other forms, NASA or FAA forms, if you already have medical forms filled out for those organizations. So read this over. You may not have to complete this form. If you don't have another opportunity and you have to go through this medical evaluation, which a lot of people do, this is the form that you're going to be using. It's nothing too invasive. It's just basically, a wellness checkup essentially is what it is. Getting your annual physical. And so you and your doctor, and I say doctor, let's use that, you and your provider, it could be an MD, a DO, a physician assistant, or a nurse practitioner. You and your provider will go through this form together and talk about this form and fill it out. One comment is, it does say color vision. You can be colorblind and race in the SCCA. You do not have to have perfect color vision, normal color vision, as a lot of men, specifically men, don't have normal color vision. So don't let that stop you. Here are some medical conditions to consider. But again, this is a conversation between you and your provider. The important part is that they sign off in the approved box, and that they approve that they think you're fit enough to go racing. If they don't, they'll fill out the failed, and then you will not pass the medical portion. Here is a self-report medical history, so you have to fill this out as well. And then SCCA provides some recommendation about the eye exam. Not all providers perform eye exams in their office. For example, I get my care from the VA in my hometown, and they don't always have the vision right there, although they tend to do the best they can, and they do a good job. So this helps out to have a little bit of this form. So now that we've talked about the novice permit application and the medical form, which are the two pieces of paperwork that you're going to have to submit to receive a novice permit, let's look at what is a novice permit. Right here, this is a novice permit. It's essentially a quarter sheet booklet. This is an old one that I never ended up using. And you can see you write your name on the top, or actually SCCA will probably write your name, because again, you send in your paperwork to SCCA. They will then mail this booklet to you, and you will use this booklet during your licensing process. So your name will be on it. Put your class on it. For me, I race in B spec, so write B spec, or if you're in Formula V, write Formula V, or whatever your class is. So this is your actual novice permit, this little book. And at the beginning of this book, we have a section for your personal information. I've redacted my address. And they'll tell you this booklet came from the SCCA national office. And that's just one thing to know, is that there's two ways of getting a license, and that's one through the national office, or two through your regional licensing person. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this one's from the national office, and most of you will likely get yours from the national office, unless you have prior racing experience, and then you'll talk to your regional licensing person. It tells you the date that it was issued, and it explains that the permit expires 2 years from the date of issue. So you have 2 years from the date that you receive this, you file for this permit, to complete the requirements of the novice permit to get a full license. Gives you an expiration date. And then this part up here on the right side of your screen, completion of driver's school requirement. Once you've completed the driver's school requirement, they will sign off right here. So it's really important that after you finish your driver's school, you see a date, a course, a signed name, and their license number right here. Then when you've completed all your requirements to receive a full competition license, you'll see that information filled out right here and signed off. So this page is really important because you need to see 2 signatures on this page to be eligible to receive your full competition license. If for whatever reason a mistake is made and the chief steward forgot to sign off in your driver's school, well, chances are you wouldn't get much further. But if you get to the end of your 3rd weekend and your chief steward forgot to sign off on your your eligibility for full competition license, you want to look at that and make sure that these get signed off because they're really important. So we see here some fun steps about how to be successful at your driver's school. Read the GCR. We'll talk about that, and I'll give you some recommendations, but definitely want to read the rule book. Get to know your local members, right? So have fun. This is a region copy that once you this is all filled out and you go to your first weekend, they will remove this. It's perforated, and they will remove this and they will keep it for their records as well on that page. Here we see an opportunity for you to list out your racing experience and your license, and so write all that down. If you've raced, put that down. Put all the information. This is your little resume here. Write that down. That way the people involved in your licensing process will get to know what you've raced. You may be 15 years old or 16 years old, but you also may have years of karting experience. So just because someone is young doesn't mean they don't have a lot of experience. You may be older. Maybe you're 50 and you're getting back into racing, and maybe you raced in your 20s. Write that down. So this next page is for your driver's school. There's 2 entries here, and you only need 1. So the second entry is if something happens the first time around, you have a space for a second school. Or if you're not proficient enough by the end of the first school, they'll ask you to go to a second school, and you'll have the space for it in 1 book. Let's talk a little bit about what you see here in front of you. So at the top, you see spacing to write out the sanction number, and that is listed on the supplemental regulations for each event. And so you'll see that ahead of time and can fill this out ahead of time. You'll have the date, the course, the car, and the class. So date, the course for me was Black Hawk Farms. My car was a Chevy Sonic, and my class is B-Spec. Below that, you see a place for the instructor rating. So they look at judgment, technique, attitude, reactions, courtesy, comparative lap times, your knowledge of the GCR, and flag recognition. This is the space the instructor will use to evaluate you. 1 being the lowest evaluation and 5 being the highest evaluation. Now, I think it's important for you to take a moment and realize where you are. If you have 0 track time, you haven't done any high performance driving experiences, you haven't done any track days, you have no racing experience whatsoever, you've had no racing coaching, driving coaching at all whatsoever, don't expect to come out with all 5s because it's just not as likely to happen. But if you're someone who has lots of experience, and you could be 16 years old and have 10 years worth of karting experience. So you may come out and have very comparative lap times and be very quick and have good technique. You may be able to heel toe well. You may be able to find the racing line quickly. And you may be able to feel the car to get to threshold braking and carrying high corner speeds, right? You may be able to do all those things. And so someone with a lot of experience may score 5s across the board. But if you don't, then just realize that with yourself and understand that you may not receive all those marks, but that's okay. The biggest thing or most important elements of this is time. you need a minimum of 3 hours of on-track observation by your instructor in order to pass the course. And they will talk to you a lot about this at the driver school. They will tell you that it's imperative that you don't miss a session, because you're going to be going on track a lot. You'll be on track for, at least in my experience, I was on track for 20 minutes, then I was off track for 20 minutes, then I was on track for 20 minutes, then I was off track for 20 minutes. I think we did that 5 times on Friday, and I think we had one session on Saturday morning. And you have to get 3 hours, and I had 3 hours and 24 minutes. And I didn't miss any of the sessions, and I didn't go out late or anything. So if you miss a session, that's running it real tight to having your minimum drive time. So they do watch it, and they do account for your time on track. So it's important that your car is well prepared, that you have help at a driver school, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit. But it's important that your car is ready to go and that you have help at the driver school, so that you meet your minimum 3 hours. And then, of course, we want to see a satisfactory mark. You want them to mark that box. And then generally they write something like, I would race with this person, which is really important. You want them to say that they would race with you, because your instructor is a volunteer. They've volunteered for the event. They're a full competition license racer within the club. And they're likely someone that you're going to end up on track with at some point in time. And so you want them to feel comfortable with you, because if they're not, then that's a problem. And so you want this to get signed off. And again, if for whatever reason it's your car breaks down and you don't get all the time, or you just have some issues, there's a second option for you to go to another driver school within this one book. Again, if this gets completed, then you want to go back to the beginning of the book, right? It says right here, if the driver has satisfactorily completed the driver school requirement, please sign off on the top portion of page 2. And so you, as the driver, it is important that you make sure that that chief steward signs off on the top of your book, so that you get this requirement right here, completion of driver school requirement signed off. Right? That's important. So you've signed off your driver school. Yay, you've completed driver school. Many driver schools are done in association with a regional or divisional race weekend. We used to call them regionals, but now they tend to be more divisional. So that division, the central division, for example, is putting on a race weekend, whereas Super Tour races tend to be put on by the national office. And so we call them divisional races, and they usually count towards a divisional championship. But they tend to be associated with a race weekend. And so mine was show up Thursday night, 7 p.m. at the track to do the ground school. And we'll talk about this later. But the ground school is basically going over knowledge they need to make sure you have. And then on Friday, we had on-track lapping sessions all day long. And then Saturday morning, we did practice starts and some short, quick, quote-unquote, races. And then if you completed the driver school, you were then considered to be a crossover driver, so you now became eligible to race in the race weekend, which counted as race weekend 1 for you. And that's what this is. So you need to participate. If you have no experience and you have nothing agreed upon from prior experience with SCCA, you need 3 race weekends to obtain enough time to meet the requirements to obtain your full competition license. That does not mean, by the way, that you have to run both Saturday and Sunday. Technically, you only have to run 1 race out of the weekend for the weekend account, just so you know. So if you show up to the weekend, you registered for both days, you race Saturday, and you got a clean race on Saturday, hey, you'll be good to go. But just to let you know. So this is where you'll fill out, again, sanction number, put the date, the course, your car, put the class, and then at the end, the chief steward of the weekend will fill out your overall finishing position and your in-class finishing position. And you want them to mark off satisfactory, and then they'll usually make some remark like clean race, no issues all weekend, or good job. And then they'll sign off on this. And you see you have enough spots here. I think we have a total of 5. Now, why is that? If I only need 3 weekends, why are there 5 spots here? Well, maybe you go to a race weekend and your car breaks down and you don't get to compete in the race. Maybe you went out for qualifying, but you didn't get to do the race. Then you have other opportunities to, up to the 5th one here, to get your race weekends in and then submit all your paperwork to get a full competition license. At the end of the book, it again tells you all the instructions of what you need to do to get your full competition license. And we'll talk about that in a second. But basically, it's the full competition license application, and then this novice permit. You'll actually send this novice permit in the mail to the national office, and an updated medical form if need be, to get your full competition license. So what that means is it's important that you photocopy this book, and that you keep it just in case it gets lost, just in case for whatever reason the mailman doesn't deliver it and you need to have it. Another reason to keep this book is if you mail this off to get your full competition license, but that's let's say a Thursday that you send it out and you're going to race that coming Saturday, well, you're not going to have your full competition license ID card back yet. So what you can do is you can use a photocopy of this book to race an additional 3 weekends using your novice permit. So it's really important that you photocopy this book. Okay, and that's what it looks like at the end of the last page. So this is the novice permit. This is really important that you keep this safe and dry. Don't let it get wet and things like that. Don't let it get covered in oil. Keep it in your gear bag, put it in a Ziploc bag, what have you. The last thing I want to mention about this novice permit is that it does say attach photo. And they really do want you to attach a photo of yourself here. Yes, it's basically a passport photo is what it is. I didn't go to Walgreens or somewhere to get a passport photo. I just figured I had a picture of myself, a professional headshot that I used for my employment, and I just printed that out at a passport photo size, and then I cut it out and I stapled it right in the book, and that's it, done. They do want you to put the photo in here because you're new. You may not be known by a lot of people, and they want to be able to find you easily. They want to be able to recognize you because not only are you being observed while driving on track, but you're also being observed in the pit lane and the paddock area. They want to make sure that you can handle pressure and stress and that you can handle challenges that arise and that you're not going to kind of fall apart. Because racing is all about solving problems. Nothing ever goes perfectly. If you have a perfect weekend, boy, that's amazing. But generally, there's going to be some hurdles that you have to overcome and some problem solving you have to do. And they want to make sure that they can see you work through all of that and that they can help you. Nobody at the driver's school, by the way, wants you to fail. They all want you to be successful. So it is important that while you're there, you talk to people. And if you're struggling, you ask your coach or your instructor, and you let people know how you're doing, or if you're struggling with something, what's going on. If they have the ability to help you, they will. Nobody wants you to fail. They want you all to be successful. They want you to get your license so that you can come race with them. So now that we've talked about the novice permit and we've covered the application form for the novice permit and the medical form, let's talk about what you have to do to receive a full competition license. The novice permit is what allows you to attend a driver's school. And then the criteria after passing the driver's school is participating in 3 race weekends like we talked about. Once you do that, you become eligible to apply for a competition license, a full competition license. And what you see in front of you now is that form. So similar to other forms, we have to fill this out, mark that we're applying for a full competition license. If you don't have any special handling concerns, don't pay the extra $140. And I don't believe you have to pay an extra $50 delivery. Put your email address down. You need to write down the 3 events that you're using as your credit towards being eligible for your full competition license right here. That'll come off your novice permit. And then sign it, of course, include payment. And again, they give instructions for all of this and what you need to do. At the time of submitting for your full competition license, if your medical paperwork is going to expire, right, because it times out based on age, as it shows here, every 5 years if you're younger than 39 or younger, or 3 years or you're 40 to 49, right? So if you're applying in within the next 6 months, your medical form is going to expire, then you'll want to send in an updated medical evaluation as well. If you don't, they're going to contact you and let you know that you need to send that in. And so this is the application that you send in along with your novice permit to receive a full competition license from SCCA. This is not for renewal, by the way. Again, if you need to renew, you need to go to this myscca.com to renew. This is for people that have completed the driver school, they've completed their 3 weekends, and now they want to receive their full competition license. This will allow you to race at races that are considered the majors races. So at that level of racing, which includes the Hoosier Super Tour, if you do not have a full competition license, you are eligible to race in regional or divisional races that are put on by your local division. And that's where you get your experience to then go racing at the majors level. Just because you can race at the majors level doesn't mean you should. If you don't have the skill set and you're not as comfortable in the car, there is nothing wrong with having a full competition license and racing at the divisional level. There's nothing wrong with getting more track time and getting more confidence in preparing yourself to race at that majors level of competition. The majors level of competition is a little bit step up from the divisional level, and so just be aware of that. But you are welcome to have a full competition license and race at the divisional level. Now I want to talk about those with prior racing experience, because this may be you and you may have prior racing experience. Here is the form that you can use to talk to the SCCA official about prior racing experience. And so, for example, if you're in the Central Division, Bob Clark is the person you're going to want to contact. So if you are wanting to get a racing license with the Sports Car Club of America and you have prior racing experience, you're going to want to start here, find your person, and if you're incentive, that's Bob Clark. Contact Bob. I'd say give that person a call and have a conversation with them. Tell them who you are, tell them what your racing experience is, and that you'd like to obtain an SCCA competition license. And from there, they may work out something with you. Then they may say, hey, go to the driver's school and just race that weekend under observation. And if you're fine and the coach or instructor has no issue with your driving, okay, we'll give you a full competition license or something. But you may not have to do all of the steps if you have considerable amount of prior racing experience. Yeah. So again, if you have prior racing experience, you don't have to go through. You might not have to go through the driver school and then the 3 weekends. Of course, if you want to and you want to go through that process because you want to see what that is like, you are more than welcome to. There's nothing that's going to stop you from going through the driver school and then signing up for 3 divisional race weekends. And the last item I want to talk about here are licenses from other organizations. You may have participated in racing with other organizations, such as maybe a BMW club or a Porsche club, or the club at Waterford Hills or Midwestern Council, and you may already have a license in one of those organizations. I would again refer you to the representative in your area that I just showed you from the prior racing experience, and talk with them, and also look in the licensing of the GCR, because SCCA does accept licenses from other organizations. So You may not have to go to a driver's school. You may be allowed to carry your license over. Again, look at Appendix C in the GCR, see if your prior organization is listed there, and then contact the regional licensing person that I just showed you and have a conversation with them. And you may be able to get racing a little bit quicker. So you've decided an SCCA school is right for you. You've gone to the SCCA website, you found a school, you've registered for the school, and now you need to make sure you're ready for the school. Well, first of all, read Section 6 of the GCR and relevant information in Section 9. Section 6, for example, is flags. And why is that important? In SCCA, they may use flags different than your other organizations or different than what you're familiar with. For example, in SCCA, we use 3 different types of yellow flags. A waving yellow means that there is some type of obstruction or something, a car stranded on the racing surface. Pay attention, slow up, slow down, be ready to maneuver your car. A standing yellow means that there is something off the racing surface, could be a stranded car or something that you need to be mindful of, and you may need to be ready to slow down as cars in front of you may have to slow down to navigate the corner. Then we use a double yellow, which means, hey, we're bringing the field under the control of the leader, and then at some point, generally a pace car, and so you maybe need to slow down and be ready for that. There's some obstruction, something out there in the track that has to be taken care of, usually by an emergency vehicle. Double yellows does not mean reduce speed to 25% and then take your time getting around the track. It does mean, hey, use caution, but prudently pack up to the field, catch up to the field. So it's important that you understand what we, for flags and how we run our events. So again, really strongly advise you to read Section 6 of the GCR and Section 9. There's safety equipment in there that you need to know, that you need to have. There's also items in there per your car, your specific class that you're going to want to know. So look over that GCR. Once you have signed up for a racing school, you will receive information in the form of an email and a letter about online training. And there's online training that they have you do before the school that takes care of the testing portion. And basically, SCCA wants to make sure that you've read portions of the GCR and that you're familiar with flag identification, that you can identify flags, and that you know what their meanings are. They also will test you on common facets of, for example, if there is a double yellow, how do we restart? What does that look like? Is it double file, two rows? Is it single file? You're going to want to know that. So complete that online training. And again, you'll get that in an email, and they'll give you instructions on how to do that before the school. The last element I've got listed here about before an SCCA school is something to consider is, are you going to rent a race car or are you going to bring one that you own? And that's important for a couple of reasons. One, the benefits of renting a car, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about the car going through annual tech inspection. You don't have to worry about maintaining the car or fixing the car there or bringing anything for the car. You can bring your own driver's gear, bring all your needed paperwork and everything, and show up. So that's nice. Now, it tends to cost money, of course. Generally in my area, just for a racing school, just for the school alone, about $1,500 for like a Spec Miata, for example. So that may be something of interest to you. If you own the car, that means you have your car. You've got to bring your car. You've got to make sure that you have your car teched, and we'll talk more about that when I go through the schedule. That you have an annual inspection done in your car. That's a safety inspection done once a year. Then, of course, you're going to have to maintain your car and make sure it stays in good working order so you can be out there on track and get all of your track time. If you bring a car that you own, I strongly, strongly recommend that you have people there to help you, 2 or 3, because you, for a whole entire day, will be going out for 20 minutes, coming back off track for 20 minutes, and then going back out. And that 20-minute break is not a lot of time to do things, because you're probably going to have to get out of the car, hydrate a little bit, run to the bathroom, and then get belted back in the car and go out again. And in my example, I had my B-Spec car, and I was vastly inexperienced, and I was just braking way too much, putting a lot of heat into my brake system, and that was causing problems. And so thankfully I had people there to help me get things changed over and and keep my car running. So you want to think about, should you rent a car or bring one that you own? Let's talk about what to expect at an SCCA competition licensing school. So first of all, let me bring up a schedule. What you're seeing in front of you is the supplemental regulations for the Central Division Driver School that happened last year. This is the school that I attended. At each event in the Sports Car Club of America, there will be supplemental regulations. And these regulations give specific information about the event and how the event is going to operate. So it's important that you look at these supplemental regulations and this information, that you understand them, and that you understand. For example, in 21 we had COVID requirements of what we had to do and could not do, and when we could enter the track, essentially. You'll also see, again, here's the sanction number that you want to put in your novice permit. This is the number that you'll put at the top of the page where it asks for the sanction number. It starts giving you information about the event, who's eligible for the event, what cars are eligible, right? Basically cars that meet the GCR. And technically, to go to a driver school, you do not have to have a fully prepped race car that meets a specific class. You just need to meet the safety requirements of SCCA. And I've seen that before. So that may be you, but you can do that. It gives important dates as far as registration, and then fees. So just for the Friday school, the on-track portion, I think that also includes the Saturday morning, but just for the school portion, $370. Okay. And then if you want to race in the regional or divisional race, the one day is $300, or both days is $525. So you're looking at $370 for the school, and you're looking at $525 for the weekend. Okay, so that would be your entry fee cost. Now, if you're in a Spec Racer Ford or an FE car, you have a little bit extra cost there. That's their compliance fee. So you want to look through this. What I want to show you then is the schedule, so we can talk about what happens at a driver school. And the schedule is in the supplementals, and they sometimes put the schedule as a standalone document as well. So here you see, starting Thursday evening, they're going to open up registration at 5:30 p.m. and it'll be open until 7 p.m. They're going to also open up the tech shed for technical inspection at 5:30 until 7:30. And that you'll also see that drivers in the school that are going through the driver school are going to have a mandatory classroom, we call the ground school, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. So if you don't have an annual technical inspection for your race car, and you're going to bring your own car to the school, you are going to want to be there right at 5:30 p.m. so that you can get your car in line and get it inspected and get that done before the school, so you don't have to worry about it. If you don't want to wait to have your car inspected for the annual tech inspection, oftentimes in your region, there are what people will call an open house or something of that nature, where there's a time and a location that's been chosen, and you can bring your car there, or now in times of COVID, you can schedule an appointment to bring your car there and have your annual inspection done before the driver school weekend. Typically, the driver school weekend, in my division at least, is the first weekend of the year. And so if you are going through the driver's school, you may want to consider getting your inspection done ahead of the driver's school, because that is just one less thing you have to worry about. you will not be allowed on track until your car has completed the annual inspection. There's no way around that. So that is something you want to work with people in your region. Again, let people know that you want to get your SCCA racing license and that you're interested in that, so that they can tell you about these opportunities and they can help you be successful. So Thursday night, you've showed up, your car is passed annual tech inspection, you're good there. Now you need to go to the ground school, and the ground school will likely take place somewhere at the track. At Blackhawk Farms, there's a classroom in the base of the tower, and we just go into that classroom, and you'll get a letter ahead of the school saying where to go. And there's tables and chairs in there, and there's a head instructor for the weekend that is responsible for running the school. That instructor for me was Jim Marinangel, a Spec Racer Ford driver for a long time and a national champion. And he spent the Thursday night talking about, we talk about flags, we talk about the track and the amenities of the track and how things operate at the track. He talked about a typical SCCA weekend and how things tend to operate at a weekend and the different roles, like who is a chief steward and what does that mean. Gave explanations of that. He talked a little bit about the driving the line of the track. But the SCCA school is not so much about coaching you to become a better driver. It's more about observing to make sure that you have the ability to handle a car and that you understand how SCCA functions. When you get into the ground school, they will take your novice permit either there or at the registration. So for example, at Blackhawk Farms, when you enter the property, on your right hand side as you drive in is a white building, and that is the registration building. Most tracks have a specific registration building, and before you enter the track, you stop at that building and you tell them, "Hi, I'm so and so, I'm here for the driver's school, I need to go through registration," and they will get you through. They'll make sure your annual waiver is signed and that everything else is taken care of. They'll give you a wristband, and you'll put that wristband around your wrist, and that signifies that you're there, that you're someone that should be there. And then you head on in, and you will then need to take your car, even if you have an annual inspection done already. You'll need to take your car to the tech inspection shed, and that's why you see here on the Thursday that technical inspection is open only to people involved in the driver school, because they want to make sure they get them through. But at each event weekend, you need to take your car to get inspected for that event, and they'll just check that you have your annual inspection, that you have your helmet inspected, and that you have all your driver gear. And so they may not want to actually physically see your vehicle. It depends on the region. In my region, generally I just have to, if I have my annual inspection done already and that's marked in my logbook, I just have to bring my logbook with my driver's gear, and they just inspect my logbook and my driver's gear, and that's it. So Thursday evening, you'll get through your ground school, ask questions at the ground school. Don't sit there and just be quiet. Be interactive to get the most out of your experience. And they'll go through the schedule. They'll even talk. Jim even showed video from some of the other Spec Racer Ford drivers and kind of talked through scenarios and gave expectations. Here's what you should do. And of course, maximize your track time is number one. So don't crash. Don't destroy your car on your first session out. That doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help the club. So you finish Thursday night, you're kind of tired probably. You leave the track, or maybe you camp out at the track, which people do. That's also something, you can camp at the track. But then Friday morning, you're there bright and early, and you see that Friday morning registration opens at 7 and it'll be open till 11:30. You've already been through registration, so you don't have to go back there. You'll see that technical inspection opens 7:30 to 2, and then they have a special note that 7 a.m. to 9:30 is for school cars only. So if you still hadn't gone through tech yet, that's your opportunity. And then you see in the schedule 8 a.m. mandatory driver meeting, and that you need to be at the base of the tower, and they're going to talk through giving you your instructors. And what they'll do is you'll all be standing there, and then your chief instructor will call off names, and he'll say so and so and so and so, you're with Bob Schmidt, and then you'll get to meet your instructor. Drivers on track with instructors mandatory. So starting at 9 a.m., instructors are going to put students either in their car or in some car, and take them for laps around the track to show them the track, show them the line, talk to the student about their driving experience and what questions they may have, offer tips on how to learn the track, learn the line, how to run the track. Michael Borden was my instructor, and he had his Miata there, so he took turns taking myself and the other student out on track, and gave us, a lay of the land, and showed us the line and kind of talked to us about what to expect during the day, and get affiliated with the track. 9:15, you see a worker meeting, and then 9:30, you see a meeting for full comp licensed drivers in the driver school sessions at the base of the tower. So in my area, one of the nice things they do is they offer full competition licensed drivers the opportunity to come run the driver school sessions. I liked it because you didn't just have school cars out on the track, because maybe there'd only be 5 or 6 school cars out on the track. So what they do is they pick full comp drivers to come run, and the school cars have somebody to race and pass and mingle with. And I think that's a really great thing. Because one, you as a novice driver, you're going to pass people, and you're going to get passed by people, and that's a good thing. You need to get comfortable doing those things. And two, the experienced drivers, the full competition licensed drivers, they're going to be able to observe you on the course. And if they see something, they can pull off and either go talk to the head instructor, or they can talk to you. And they might come up to you and say, hey, this happened to a friend of mine. He had to go talk to somebody in the school because that person in the school saw that a faster car was coming up behind them. And so instead of getting on the throttle, exiting the last corner onto the straightaway, they thought they would be late on the throttle and just take it easy so the car could get around them. Well, the experienced driver, came up to him after the session and said, hey, don't do that. I almost ran you over. Here's what you should do. You should get on full throttle, and I'm just going to drive around you. Don't worry about it. So I really like having the extra cars there. I don't think you should stress about that. I think you should see that as a good opportunity if your school gets to do that. So we start to see then that there's a worker meeting, right? And then all of a sudden we start at 10:05. Closed wheel cars are on track at 10:05. And so for the closed wheel cars, the sedans, the tin toppers and that thing, you're on track. You're going to go. It's go time. Now, this is your first session. Now, what they did in my school, and I think this is a good idea, is they started out with sort of a lead follow. They put a pace car out there running at about 35, 40 miles an hour. And then they put the school cars single file behind the pace car. And they said, just run behind the pace car, get a feel for the track, get a feel for the line. They also, for the first 3 sessions of the day, they put out cones at every apex so you could easily see the apex. And I think that's a good thing for a school scenario as well. So it was really nice to get out there and just run easy and run the line and see the corners and get a feel for the track. I think that was a good move. And my suggestion to you is run the line always. Every time you're out on track, you run the line. You get wide on quarter entry, you turn down to get to the apex, go all the way down to the apex, and then track out. And you just do that every single time you're on the track. And so start with that first session. So then we see A, B, go, right? And then after B, group A goes out again at 11:10 to 11:35. And there you're just going to go out. And so what they'll do is they have you line up on the false grid, right? All the cars are lined up, and then they'll release you out on the track. Generally at Blackhawk, they like to bunch them up because it's a smaller track. And so you might go straight out onto the start-finish straightaway and then be in double file and then take off from there. Or they might have it where they just have you go down the pit lane. I think now that I think about it, they just had us go down the pit lane and exit out the pit lane. And a good rule of thumb at any track, do not cross the blend line from the pit lane to the track until it's time. That's a big no-no. So make sure you just keep yourself to the proper side of the bend line. So you're going to go out, you're A, B, right? And then you see here at 12:05, on-track session with instructor. And it's considered optional. Well, my recommendation to you is to use that time. This is the most amount of track time you're going to get for your dollar compared to anything else you're going to do in the club. And so leverage that as much as you can. And I did. I talked to Michael Borden and I said, hey, I'm not really that comfortable yet at speed. I need to get more comfortable. And he said, well, hop into the Miata. And he took me out for laps at speed in his Miata. And we talked about line, and we talked about, getting the car to turn in. We talked about differences of a limited slip diff and an open diff and how to drive that. And with the open diff, how to carry that speed into the corner so that you can get on throttle later so that you can get through the corner, right? So I strongly recommend that you leverage all the time that you have to you to gain and learn as much as you can, because you're never going to be in a situation where you have this much track time with this much coaching for a couple $100. It's just not going to happen again. And so I strongly encourage that you take those opportunities. Then you see there's lunch, and then you see it goes through Group A, Group B, Group A, Group B, Group A, Group B again. This is really where it gets intense, because you're going out for 20 minutes, then you're coming off the track for 20 minutes, and then you're going out for 20 minutes again. So you're really going to need people there to help you put fuel in the car, to help make sure the lug nuts and everything are still tight, to help make sure the car's running well. I mean, I had odd things like the cap to my coolant tank was coming off and not holding the pressure. So thankfully I had my brother there, and we ended up taping it down. That's just the way it is. The coolant reservoir tank, just for whatever reason, and the cap just weren't holding tight. And so we had to solve that problem, and we did. And so you'll be exhausted by the end of this day here. This is a lot of on-track time, but it's really important that you're there. Again, you need your minimum of 3 hours of track time. So you need to be out there for these sessions. And if you're not going to pass the school. It's the bottom line. At the end of the day, you have a mandatory meeting for all the drivers in the classroom. That's to go over the day. That's to talk about some of the things the instructor may have seen. They're going to talk about what's going to happen the next day, and kind of give you a final recap. So you're going to want to be there for that as well. Okay, you have finished your first day Friday, and now you've made it to Saturday. You went home, or you spent the evening at the track. You slept pretty hard because it was a long day, and now you're back for Saturday. And Saturday morning, the instructor will have told you what the events of the day are, and you see that they're two groups again. It's supposed to be A and B. This is a mistake here where the bolded A is. That's a mistake. But it's practice starts, and so they split you into your two groups, and you roll out there. And at Black Hawk Farms, what we did is we rolled out onto the grid and lined up as if it was a race. So we were double file and went around the lap and took the green flag. And we would take the green flag and we would race from the green flag to turn 5. And there's between turn 4 and 5, there's a little short chute there. And at turn 5, the head instructor would stop all of our cars, and he'd mix the field up, maybe move 1 or 2 of them around, 3 or 4 of them around. And then we would start up again in double file from turn 5 and roll up to the green flag, or the start finish, as if it was the beginning of the start of a race, and we'd do another start. And we would race from the green to turn 5 again. And people were making passes and moves during that time. And I think, you should try to mix it up a little bit and obviously be smart. No one was taking each other out. You don't want to make contact. That's not wise. But we did that 3 times. Then after the third start, we then finished the session out. The session's not very long. We then finished the session, 25 minutes. So we finished the session out with lapping. And just getting our time in and lapping. And by the end of the driver school, you're pushing pretty hard. You've built up some confidence. You're having a lot of fun. You're trying to bring that lap time down a little bit and really hit your marks and push some speed through the corners. So that's a lot of fun. And then after that was over, I was Group A. If you pass the school, you then go into the base of the tower, and you are now considered to be a crossover driver, right? For crossover drivers only, we go back to the classroom. We do our registration for the race. Since there's no time to go through the formal process, they just did a shortened process for us there, right at the base of the tower. Because if we move into the race weekend, I was Group 1. I was the first group out. So I had to quickly move from school to race weekend. And I had to then move into and get ready and go out to qualify. But for the gist of this, that's what a driver's school is. And they generally are held with a race weekend so that you can not only get the school portion, right? So now that school portion of your logbook is signed off, and now you're moving into your first race weekend. So if you complete the race on Saturday or the race on Sunday or both, if you complete that race successfully without any issue, you then have not only your driver's school completed, but you have one race weekend completed. And you need 2 more race weekends to be eligible to apply for a full competition license. Now, during the driver's school, are they expecting you to be absolutely perfect all weekend? No, not necessarily. You may very well spin out, go off track. In fact, I know of at least 1 or 2 people in my school that spun out and went off track. And one guy tried to pass me down the inside at 6 and went off. I mean, it just happens. If you begin your racing career and you never spin out and you never go off track, you never drop a wheel off, you're going to be a very safe driver, but you're going to probably be a slow, safe driver. You have to sort of push yourself, right, to go a little faster, carry a little more speed, and sometimes that's going to lead you to spinning out. It's just what happens. And so, yes, keep the car on track during the driver's school, but just know if you happen to make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. Now, if you're making mistakes every single lap, well, then they're going to flag you in, they're going to pull you in and talk to you. The other thing during the driver's school is maybe that first session or so, they won't throw flags, but at some point during these sessions, they will throw a red flag. They will throw a black flag people if need be. They will throw yellow flags. They will throw an EV out there. They'll put a truck out there. They want you to identify the flags. And if you don't, they're going to talk to you. Right? If you miss a flag, they're going to pull you in and talk to you. And that's just the nature of it. And it's sort of the standard and the expectation. One thing that I think people miss every now and again is they automatically assume that a stationary white flag out on course is for an emergency vehicle, an EV. And that isn't necessarily the case. They may throw a stationary white flag because there's a slow-moving race car. In SCCA, stationary white flag just means slow-moving vehicle. Generally, it's an emergency vehicle, but it doesn't always have to be an emergency vehicle. And so they'll put those out there, and they want to see how you react to those flags. And so just know that that's going to happen, and just react to them accordingly. And if they pull you in, and they say, we threw a flag that you missed, probably not the best time to argue with them. You can talk to them and they'll ask, hey, what's going on? Why do you think you missed it? And they'll talk to you about it. But that's not a time to argue if you're in the penalty box having a discussion. I'd like to finish this section out by mentioning a little bit about coaching and coaches. I talked about coaches at the driver's school, but coaching is something you can continue beyond the driver's school. And if you have you don't have a lot of experience, you're quite inexperienced, that may be something, as opposed to buying that next fast speed part, maybe you spend that money on hiring a driver coach and using that to go faster, because you'll get a lot better with seat time and coaching than you would by putting any of the fast parts. So carry that forward from the school, that coaching mentality, and help develop yourself. So life after school, you've made it through your driver's school, you've completed that requirement, and now you're going to be going to race weekends on your own. First of all, know that that novice permit that you have in your possession, when you go into registration to register for a weekend, they will either take your novice permit right there at registration, or they'll say the chief steward is so and so. You can find them over in this location. Give them your novice permit. While you are on your novice permit, you have to give it to the correct person, so that they have it in their possession. And that person, usually the chief steward for the weekend, will put it into their pile of other novice permits, and they will keep it in their possession the entire weekend. That's done so that they know that they have to watch for you, and that they have to observe you, and that they can write down any comments about your conduct, your driving, and your behavior throughout the weekend. I never had anything negative said. They always write something like, good race, clean weekend, good job, kind of thing. But while you're on your novice permit, you must give that over when you come to the event. So hand that over. The other thing that I would say that you do is ask questions and tell people that you're new. Let people around you know, introduce yourself to the people paddocking next to you and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and this is my first weekend out. Because there's going to be a lot that you just don't know. Either how SCCA works and runs, or maybe it's car setup, or car prep, or maybe it's the track. And people, to a point, they're going to be willing to help you and wanting to help you because they want other people to race against. So it's to their benefit to get you up and running. The last thing about life after school is get as much seat time as possible. There's so much to be gained over just by seat time. And so look at other ways. Yes, once you have passed the school portion of an SCCA event and you've done one weekend, a lot of other organizations will allow you to race with them because of that. And that's easy for you to show, like, hey, here's my my book. I've done one weekend. I've passed the driver's school. And so maybe you get into some endurance races or something of that nature. Get as much seat time as possible. So let's talk about total cost. And I'll talk about what this is and what this is not. So first of all, what do we have in front of us? We see there we have the cost of the competition school. And then these are my costs per weekend that I actually raced. The 370 was the school, 525 weekend 1, 500 weekend 2, 495 weekend 3. That's just entry fees, okay? So just in entry fees and the cost of the school, I have $1,890. Now, if we think back to the school in Texas that I showed earlier, it was about $1,870, I think, or something like that. So right there, in that one school, you were going to be in that school long enough to get your full competition license, to be eligible for a full competition license, and it was about the same as going to a driver's school and going through 3 weekends. So cost-wise, that is a very economical way of getting to your full license and getting your full license quickly, because there in one weekend you've done enough track time to warrant being signed off on your full license. Now, the other question is, just because you have a full license, does that mean you should be jumping into Hoosier Super Tour events? Not necessarily. You still need the track time. You still need to learn and get faster and get your head about you when you're in traffic and make good decisions, and maybe you're not there. Again, this goes back to where I started. You need to know yourself and know where you're at. And so it might behoove you to race 3-4 weekends at the divisional regional level as opposed to jumping into a majors or a Hoosier Super Tour event, right? Just because you could. Other things I have listed, tires, we run a spec tire, and so that's shipped $185 a tire. Brake fluid, I changed my brake fluid halfway through the year. Transmission fluid, I had to change my fluid, so that's the fluid change, not all the fluid. Engine oil, that's as much engine oil as I used all year. brake pads just for the front, shoes for the rear, and fuel estimated. Now I just run 93 octane, nothing special, right? I estimated it was about 70 gallons. So that's just sort of like consumables, right? That gives you an idea of consumables. That's not the cost of the car, obviously. That's not the cost of transportation. That's not the cost of a hotel room if I had that in there. So there's a lot other costs, but those were widely dependent on which car you have. So it didn't really matter. It didn't really make sense for me to put that in this video. But you can see all-in cost about $36.95. So you're looking at your first year of just running being about just over $3,500. I just put this at the end so that people know, but then you also might want to consider maybe you're close enough to one of those schools that offers you a full competition license, and maybe that's a more economical way for you to go. For me, I couldn't be gone Monday through Wednesday for the school, which means for me going down to Texas would have been Sunday through Thursday. It means I had to take off that much PTO, which I could have done, but my help couldn't have done that. The people that were helping me, there's no way they would have been able to do that. And yeah, it would have been nice, and the school price would have been fine, but just time-wise, it's just too far for me. I hope this video helps you. I hope that this gets you closer to your goal of getting on track with SCCA. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via my information here on YouTube, or hopefully you're finding other pages. For example, we have a B-Spec page on Facebook, B-Spec Racing. Go ahead and join that page if you want to learn more about the B-Spec class, for example. And then start asking questions, especially if you're going to be building a car. You know, you want to ask questions and get help from as many people as you can to make sure you have a successful build. I hope this helps you get on your way to earning your license and possibly choosing an SCCA school to meet your needs. Have fun, and I hope to see you at a track sometime soon.